In a big, bright city full of tall buildings, fast cars and glowing lights, there lived a man named Kofi Mensah. Everyone in the city knew his name. He owned three big companies. He had workers who wore suits, carried tablets and called him Sir. He had three cars, one white, one black, and one silver. He lived in a tall house made of glass and marble. His kitchen was always full, his closets were always full, but his heart empty. Kofi had no wife, no children, and no one to sit with when the night grew quiet. When he was younger, he thought money would make him happy. And for a while it did. He traveled to many countries. He wore expensive watches. He was invited to big parties. People smiled at him, shook his hand, and called him important names. But over time, Kofi began to notice something. People smiled when he paid for things. They laughed at his jokes when he paid the bill. But when he was tired or sick, they didn't come. When he was quiet, no one listened. One night after a long day of meetings, Kofi sat alone in his huge dining room. His plate was full, but he didn't feel hungry. He looked at the empty chairs. He whispered to himself, "Is this what I worked so hard for?" Then he did something strange. He got up from the table, walked to the window, and looked out over the city. The lights sparkled like stars below him. But the more he looked, the more he remembered something. He remembered his village, a small, dusty place with narrow paths and wooden doors. No cars, no supermarkets, but full of people who laughed without reason and helped without asking. He had left that village many years ago with nothing but a bag and a dream. He had promised himself he would return someday, a successful man. He had become successful, but he had never gone back. Now he was tired of city life. He didn't want another business meeting or another party. What he wanted more than anything was to find someone who loved him not because of his wealth, but because of his heart. That night, Kofi made a decision. He walked to his closet, took out an old leather bag, and filled it with simple clothes. He left his gold watch behind. He left his shiny shoes behind. He packed only what a poor man would carry. Then he wrote a letter to his workers. "I will be away for some time. Handle things without me. Do not call unless there is fire or flood." He smiled and placed the letter on his desk. The next morning, Kofi left the city quietly. No one knew where he was going. A long journey through winding roads. Past hills and rivers, he arrived at his old village. The air smelled like firewood and fresh corn. Goats wandered along the paths. Children chased each other barefoot after. The village hadn't changed much. But now Kofi had changed. He was no longer the boy who had left many years ago. He was a grown man with hidden riches and a silent M. He wanted to find a wife. Not just any wife, not a woman who wanted diamonds or city dresses. He wanted someone simple, kind, and strong, someone who would love him even if he had nothing. He would hide his true identity. No one in the village would know he was rich. They would see only a poor farmer in worn shoes, looking for work and shelter. And from this quiet life he would begin his search. On his first day back, he walked to the village square. Some people looked at him curiously. Some nodded politely, most ignored him. He found a small mud house for rent, just one room and a wooden stool. He paid the landlord with quiet coins and moved in with his old leather bag. The next day, he joined the farmers in the fields. He carried a hoe and worked with the others. He didn't complain, he didn't brag. He just smiled and did his work. People began to notice him. "That new man works hard," some said. "But he looks like he has no one," others whispered. Kofi didn't mind. He was watching, listening, learning. Each day after work, he walked through the village, greeting people with a warm smile. He helped an old woman lift her firewood. He bought oranges from a boy selling fruit. He fixed a broken roof for a lonely widow. He did everything kindly, never asking for anything in return. But still, most people treated him like a stranger. a poor man with rough hands and dusty clothes. He didn't mind, that was part of the plan. He wanted to see who would notice his heart before they saw his hands. Days turned into weeks. Kofi saw many young women in the village, some pretty, some proud, some playful. Some of them he tried to speak to. "Good morning," he would say, "may I walk with you?" But many would laugh or walk away. "I don't speak to poor farmers," one said with a smile too sharp. "You smell like goats," another giggled with her friends. Kofi would smile gently and walk away. He did not get angry, he had expected this. He was not looking for a woman who smiled at money. He was looking for a woman who smiled at kindness. One day, while helping at the river, he saw a young woman washing clothes. She wore a simple blue dress and had a quiet look in her eyes. She did not laugh with the others. She did not speak loudly. She worked, humming a soft song to herself. As she scrubbed her grandmother's wrapper, as she stood up, her eyes met Kofi's. She nodded politely. "Thank you for helping with the buckets," she said, and returned to her washing. Her name, Kofi would soon learn, was Amma. And that was the day everything began to change. Kofi couldn't stop thinking about the girl from the river. Her name was Amma, and she was different. She didn't look down on him, she didn't laugh behind her hand. She didn't walk away when he spoke kindly. She had said thank you, just 2 words, but they were real. In a village where most girls ignored him, those 2 words felt like a gift. That night, Kofi sat outside his little mud house. The stars above the village were bright, far brighter than the lights in the city. He looked up and whispered to the night, "If there is one person in this world who can love me as I am, let it be someone like her." The next morning, Kofi returned to the river. He didn't want to seem strange or pushy, so he kept his distance. He helped carry water again, this time for some older women. He smiled, said little, and stayed close enough to see Amma, but far enough not to disturb her. But Amma noticed. After finishing her washing, she walked over to him. "You're the man from yesterday," she said gently, "the one who helped with the buckets." Kofi stood up quickly, brushing dust from his knees. "Yes, my name is Kofi." "Amma," she replied with a small nod. There was silence for a moment. The sound of water, birds, and children's laughter filled the air. Then Amma asked, "Did you just move to the village?" Kofi smiled. "I grew up here long ago, but I've been away for many years." Amma tilted her head. "Why did you come back?" Kofi thought carefully. "I came to live a simple life, and maybe to find something I lost." Amma looked at him curiously, but didn't ask more. She said, "Well, welcome back." And just like that, she walked away, carrying her wet clothes in a basket balanced on her head. Kofi stood there, heart light. She didn't ask about money, she didn't ask where he had been, she just welcomed him. It was a small thing, but it gave Kofi an idea. That night he sat in the quiet and made a plan. He would not tell anyone in the village who he really was, not yet. If he wanted to find someone who truly cared about him, not his money, not his businesses, not his city suits, then he had to stay as a poor farmer. He would keep helping others. He would live humbly. He would continue to speak kindly, walk slowly and smile gently. And he would get to know Amma, not in a rush, not with gifts, but with truth. Days passed. Each morning, Kofi worked in the fields, planting yams and maize. Each afternoon, he visited the well or the river to help fetch water or carry wood. And whenever he saw Amma, he would smile and say, "Good afternoon." Sometimes she smiled back, sometimes they spoke about the weather, the crops, or the noise of the goats. Their conversations were short, but they grew slowly, like seeds waiting for rain. One afternoon, while walking near the market, Kofi saw Amma sitting under a tree with an old woman. The woman's legs were wrapped in cloth and her eyes looked tired. Kofi paused and walked closer. Amma looked up. "Hello, Kofi." "Good day, Amma. May I greet your grandmother?" Amma smiled. "This is Nana Essie." The old woman smiled weakly. "Ah, A polite young man, we thank God for you. Kofi noticed that Amma was feeding her grandmother small spoonfuls of soft porridge. He asked softly, is she ill? Amma nodded, her legs are weak. I take care of her, it's just the two of us. Kofi felt a quiet warmth in his heart. Here was a young woman, not thinking of fancy clothes or loud friends, but caring for her grandmother every day. He looked at her and said, you are strong, Amma. She smiled, but this time her eyes looked away. That night, Kofi thought about everything he had seen. In the city, he had met many women. Some had wanted his money. Some had wanted his name. Some had only wanted gifts and holidays. But Amma wanted nothing except to care for her grandmother. And that made Kofi's heart begin to hope. Next day, Kofi brought 2 ripe plantains and a small jar of palm oil to Amma's house. He knocked gently on the wooden door. Amma opened it, surprised. You brought these? Yes, for Nana Essie, it's not much. But I thought it might help. Amma took the items and looked at him for a moment. Then she said quietly, thank you, Kofi. No big smiles, no hugging, just simple, honest gratitude. From that day on, Kofi began to visit more often. Sometimes he helped Amma fetch water. Sometimes he helped clean the cooking pots. Sometimes they sat quietly while Nana Essie told old stories of the village. Slowly, carefully, Kofi was planting something, not in the soil, but in Amma's heart. And in his heart, too, something was growing. But not everyone in the village was blind. Some of the other young women began to notice that Kofi was spending time with Amma. One of them, named Abina, told her friends, that poor farmer keeps going to Amma's house. Why, she's not even that pretty. Another said maybe she's putting something in his food. They all laughed. One day, Abina saw Kofi on the way to the well. She walked up to him and said sweetly, Kofi, why do you always go to Amma's house? Don't you know there are other girls in the village? Kofi smiled politely and said, I go where I feel peace. Abina frowned and walked away. Kofi didn't mind what others said. He had seen enough people with beautiful faces and selfish hearts. What he wanted now was someone with a beautiful soul. And he was starting to believe that Amma had just that. One evening, as the sun set over the hills, Kofi walked Amma home from the river. They didn't talk much, but before she went inside, Amma looked at him and said, You're not like the other men in this village, Kofi. He looked at her carefully. Why do you say that? She shrugged. You listen, you help without asking. You don't talk big, you feel honest. Kofi felt a lump in his throat. He wanted to tell her the truth, that he had money, cars and a big house far away, that he could take her to places she had never dreamed of, that he was not just a farmer. But he didn't say any of that. Instead, he said quietly, Thank you, Amma, that means more to me than you know. And she smiled. That night, Kofi sat under the stars once more. He closed his eyes and said to the wind, I came here to find someone who would love me without gold. And now I think I have found her. But little did Kofi know, the biggest test was still ahead. Soon a message would arrive from the village chief, and everything would begin to change. Amma, she stood with her grandmother, wide-eyed hand covering her mouth. Then Kofi said softly, And I found someone who said thank you before she knew my name. Someone who cared for her grandmother, who worked with her hands and spoke with her heart. Someone who smiled without expecting a gift. He stepped forward slowly, respectfully, and stood before her. Amma, he said, will you be my wife? The square was silent. Everyone watched. Amma's eyes filled with tears. She looked at her grandmother, who nodded gently. She looked at Kofi, still wearing dusty sandals. Then she said, Yes, yes, I will. Cheers burst from the crowd. The drummers began to play. Children danced, women clapped, men shouted with joy. The poor farmer was not poor. The rich stranger was not a stranger. And love had found its home in the most honest way. That night the village celebrated. Kofi wore white but kept his sandals. Amma wore a blue dress and held his hand. The wedding with no price. The sun had barely risen when the news spread from house to house like sweet smoke. Kofi the farmer was rich. Amma, the quiet girl from the river, was to be his wife. The village buzzed with excitement. Children ran through the streets shouting, "There will be a wedding, there will be a wedding." Women gathered in courtyards to discuss it. "I always knew Kofi was different," one said. "Amma is lucky," another added, shaking her head. "She's not lucky," Nana Essie, Amma's grandmother, said calmly from her stool. "She's loved." Kofi and Amma sat under the big mango tree behind her house. They didn't say much. The breeze danced through the leaves. Chickens clucked softly nearby. Amma finally broke the silence. "Everyone is talking, they can't believe it's true." Kofi smiled. "Sometimes truth hides in plain sight." Amma looked at him. "But what if people say I only accepted you after I knew you were rich?" Kofi reached for her hand gently. "Let them say what they want, I know who you are. You treated me kindly when I was just a farmer with dusty feet. That's the only truth that matters." Amma nodded. "Then let's do this the right way." That evening, Kofi went to see Nana Essie. He knelt before her. "Mama," he said respectfully, "I wish to marry your granddaughter. But I want to do it your way. Not the city's way. Please tell me what the bride price is." Nana Essie laughed softly. Her voice was gentle but firm. "My son, Amma, is not for sale. Her value is not in coins or cows." She leaned closer. "The only bride price I ask is this: keep your word. Be kind to her and do not let your riches become louder than your heart." Kofi's eyes filled with tears. "You have my promise, Mama." The next day, Kofi gathered the elders and made an announcement. There will be no golden wedding rings. No trucks filled with food, no long list of gifts. My heart was accepted when it wore old clothes and muddy sandals. That is the heart I offer still. Some people whispered, "But he is rich, why not show it? He can afford more." But the chief stood up and said, "Let us not confuse loudness with love. A quiet wedding built on truth is better than a noisy one built on pride." And with that, the village agreed. The wedding would be simple, beautiful, real. The day of the wedding arrived. It was held in the open field where the crops were planted each year, where Kofi had worked as a poor man, sweating under the sun. Now the same field would witness his joy. The people gathered with drums and dancing. There were no expensive chairs, no big speakers, no cameramen from the city. Just neighbors, cousins, children, elders, and friends. Amma wore a dress sewn by her own hands, a soft yellow fabric that made her look like morning light. Kofi wore a white cotton shirt and the same sandals he had always worn. He smiled, because nothing had changed except everything. When Amma walked toward him, holding her grandmother's hand, the whole village stood still. The birds stopped singing. The breeze paused. Even the goats went quiet. Kofi's eyes glistened with tears. He whispered, "You're beautiful." Amma whispered back, "You're real." The chief stood before them holding a carved staff. He said only a few words. "May your love stay simple, your truth stay strong, and your heart stay open, no matter how wide your world becomes." And with that, they were married. No papers, no diamonds, only a promise and a kiss. After the wedding, Kofi stood before the people and made one final speech. "Many of you saw me walk through this village as a poor man. Some helped me, some laughed. Some ignored me, that's okay. I came here to find something rare. A heart that loves not because of what it sees, but because of what it feels. I found that in Amma. And now I will give back not with pride, but with joy. We will build a school for the children, repair the clinic for the sick, and make sure every home has clean water." The village clapped and cheered. But the biggest smile was Amma's, because she knew he would have done all of that even if she had said no. That night under a sky filled with stars, Kofi and Amma sat beside a small fire behind their new home. No big lights, no noise, just peace. Amma leaned her head on Kofi's shoulder. So, where do we go from here? Kofi smiled. We stay right here and live the kind of life we dreamed of one day. One truth, one smile at a time. And the stars above them blinked quietly as if to say, this is what love looks like. And as the stars rose once more above the quiet village, everyone knew. Riches can buy gold, but only truth can buy love. Whispers of doubt. The wedding was over, but the story had just begun. Kofi and Amma now lived in a tidy little home near the stream, close to the fields, close to the people, and even closer to each other. Every morning, Kofi fetched water from the well. He greeted the elders, he still helped patch leaky roofs and carry heavy firewood. He had not changed. Amma cooked in the open courtyard and swept the compound. She still helped her grandmother and joined the other women at the market. They were rich, but they lived like ordinary people. Some admired them. Some didn't understand. And some began to whisper. It started small, like a breeze brushing the grass. A group of women sat beneath a tree, shelling beans and gossiping. Did you see the way Amma walks now? One said. Like the village belongs to her. Another replied before the wedding. She wore the same 2 wrappers every day. Now she's wearing new cloth from Accra. She's clever, that one, the first woman said. She caught herself a rich man by pretending to be humble. They laughed softly, but behind a tree someone was listening. A child. She heard every word, and that evening she repeated it at home. The next day a group of men sat under the palm tree near the roadside, fixing nets and sharpening cutlasses. I still can't believe Kofi fooled all of us. One man said, living like a poor farmer when he had money in the bank. Another man nodded. It was a trick, a test, we failed. He could have helped the village from the beginning. Why wait until after he got the girl? Exactly, said a third. Maybe he came to show off after all. They shook their heads, but behind a wall a teenager heard them. And he told his friends later that day. And so the whispers grew louder. Amma noticed it first. People still smiled at her, but some smiles looked stretched, like they were wearing masks. Some women no longer sat near her at the market. Some men didn't wave when Kofi passed with his bicycle. One day Amma came home with tears in her eyes. Kofi, what did we do wrong? She asked. Kofi looked up from the yams he was peeling. What happened? I greeted some women and they think I tricked you or that you tricked all of them. Kofi put down his knife. He took her hand. Amma, he said gently, truth walks slower than gossip, but it walks farther. But the whispers didn't stop. One day, a group of villagers went to the chief. We want to know why Kofi hides his riches, they said. He could build a mansion, he could drive a big car. Instead, he acts like he's still one of us. The chief looked at them with calm eyes. And isn't that a good thing? But the people grumbled. He's pretending, just like she pretended to be shy and simple. They're both hiding who they really are. The chief sighed. Then maybe you don't know who they really are. But the doubts had taken root. That evening the chief visited Kofi's house. They sat under the mango tree with Amma and Nana Essie. The chief spoke carefully. There are whispers, people are beginning to forget your kindness. They remember the gold now, not the good. Kofi nodded slowly. I expected this, truth always faces a storm. Amma looked at the chief. What should we do? The chief smiled. You don't need to shout to prove your heart. But sometimes a small truth needs a louder voice. Kofi leaned back. Then he said quietly, it's time for me to tell my full story. The next market day, Kofi stood in the village square. He didn't send a messenger, he didn't beat the drums. He just stood and waited. Curious faces gathered. What's he doing? Why is he standing there? Is he going to make a speech? When enough people had arrived, Kofi raised his voice, not loud but clear. I was born in this village. Just like many of you, I left as a boy with a dream. In the city, I worked hard, I made money. But I lost my peace. I returned not to show off, but to find something real. He looked at Amma. I didn't test you, I trusted you. And you showed me kindness when I had nothing. Then he looked back at the crowd. I'm not hiding my wealth, I just don't want to be owned by it. I don't want to live in a house so big I forget my neighbor. I don't want to ride a car so loud I can't hear my own heart. Silent. Then slowly someone began to clap. Then another. Then the whole crowd. After that day, the whispers didn't disappear, but they grew quieter. Because truth, once spoken clearly, cannot be unspoken. Kofi and Amma kept living as they always had. They gave where they could, they worked with their hands. They stayed close to the people who needed them most. And though some still watched with quiet eyes, most now smiled with open hearts, because they had seen something rare. A man who did not lose himself to riches, and a woman who never changed when riches found her. After the market day speech, things slowly became calm again. Kofi and Amma's days were filled with work, laughter and little moments of joy. In the mornings, they shared roasted plantains before heading to the fields. In the evenings, they sat by the fire and listened to Nana Essie tell old stories under the stars. They weren't just husband and wife. They were partners. They were friends. And soon they became a light in the village. But one quiet morning, Amma asked a question that stayed in the air like smoke. Kofi, what will we leave behind? Kofi blinked. What do you mean? Amma looked up from the millet she was sorting. I mean, what will people remember us for long after we are gone? Kofi thought for a long time. Then he stood. Come with me, he said. They walked past the edge of the village, across a narrow stream and into a quiet grove where children sometimes played. There stood an old baobab tree, taller than every house in the village, with roots like giant fingers and a thick trunk that seemed to hold stories inside it. Kofi touched its bark. This tree has stood here longer than the oldest elder, he said. Yes, Amma whispered, it has seen everything. Kofi nodded. Then let it see us too, let's plant something here. Something that grows with every promise we keep. The next morning they returned to the grove with a shovel, a clay pot and a small seedling wrapped in wet cloth. They dug a hole near the old baobab. Not too close, just enough to share the shade. Amma placed the seedling in the ground. Kofi gently covered the roots. Then they both poured water from the clay pot and bowed their heads. Amma whispered a promise. I will love with honesty, speak with kindness, and stay humble always. Kofi whispered too. I will protect with courage, give with joy, and never forget where I came from. The wind rustled through the leaves of the baobab. It sounded almost like a yes. They named the seedling the promised tree. That week, Amma invited the children to visit the tree. She told them, if you make a promise with your heart, this tree will help you grow it. The children were curious. Some made small promises. I promise to help my mother fetch water. I promise to stop fighting my brother. I promise to share my mangoes. They placed tiny stones at the foot of the tree after each promise. And each day the tree grew slowly, quietly, patiently. Soon word spread through the village. The promised tree became a place of peace. Young couples went there to talk. Elders sat in its shade to pray. Even those who once whispered against Kofi and Amma began visiting. Because something about that tree made people feel honest. It didn't ask for gifts. It didn't punish broken promises. It just listened. And it remembered. One afternoon, a troubled boy named Ya came to the tree. He was known for stealing mangoes and throwing stones at chickens. But that day, he stood quietly beside the trunk. He didn't say a word. He just looked up at the sky, then down at the soil. Amma, who had come to water the tree, saw him. She didn't chase him away. She only said gently, you don't have to speak it loud, just mean it inside. Yaw placed a stone at the base of the tree. Then he walked away. And the very next day, he returned the goat he had stolen from the tailor's compound. The promised tree was working. Kofi and Amma didn't put up a sign. They didn't tell the chief or hold a ceremony. They just let the tree live and breathe. But still, something magical happened. Every week, the ground around the tree grew richer. Small purple flowers bloomed at its roots. Birds nested in its young branches. And when the wind blew through its leaves, people said it whispered songs. One elder told a visitor, "That tree listens with its heart." The visitor laughed. "How can a tree listen?" The elder smiled. "Because it was planted by love, not just hands." One bright morning, as Kofi was sweeping the front yard and Amma was grinding pepper under the tree, a loud noise echoed through the village. It was the sound of a car, big, shiny and black, rolling down the dusty village road. Children ran after it. Chickens flew out of the way. Old men looked up from their mats. The car stopped right in front of Kofi and Amma's house. 3 men stepped out wearing suits and shiny shoes. They didn't belong to the village. They were from the city. Kofi dropped his brew. "Quaim," he said, surprised. The tallest man smiled and opened his arms. "Kofi, my brother, my partner, my friend." Kofi laughed and hugged him. "You came all the way here." "Of course," Quaim said. "We've been trying to reach you. No phone calls, no emails. The company is waiting." Kofi looked down at his dusty feet and smiled. "I've been busy living." Inside the house, Amma brought water in a calabash and set out fresh bananas and roasted ground nuts. The city men sat stiffly, wiping their faces with white cloths. "Your wife is lovely," one said politely. Amma smiled and bowed her head. But she could tell they didn't understand her world. They looked around the small house and raised their eyebrows. No air conditioner, no television. Just mats, shelves, and sunlight. Quaim cleared his throat. "Kofi, we need to talk. Big investors are waiting. There are deals to sign. You can't live here forever." Kofi nodded slowly. "I know. So when are you coming back?" Kofi didn't answer right away. He looked at Amma. Then he looked out the window toward the fields, the river, the promised tree. After the visitors left, the village buzzed again. "Did you see the car? They say Kofi was a big man in the city. Why is he still here when he can live in a mansion?" Amma listened quietly. She had heard these whispers before. But this time they weren't full of jealousy. They were full of wonder. "Maybe Kofi knows something we don't," one boy said. "Maybe peace is better than power," an old woman added. Still, Amma could see Kofi was thinking deeply. That night, as they sat under the moon, she asked him, "Will you go back?" Kofi took a deep breath. Maybe, but not to stay, just to remind the city of what truly matters. The next day, Kofi packed a small bag. Not with gold, not with fine clothes. Just a notebook, a pen, and a photo of Amma by the promised tree. Amma walked him to the edge of the village. The car waited with its doors open. Kofi turned to her. "I'm not leaving you. I'm only going to carry our truth into rooms where people have forgotten how to speak softly." Amma smiled. "And when you come back?" Kofi held her hands. "We plant another tree." Then he kissed her forehead and climbed into the car. As it drove off, the whole village watched in silence. But there was no sadness, only pride. Kofi arrived in the city after many months away. The air smelled different, sharp, busy, full of smoke and speed. Tall buildings lined the sky, cars honked, people hurried. But Kofi walked slowly. He remembered it all. The noise, the lights, the rushing. But now he saw it with new eyes. At the office, everyone stood up when he entered. "Sir, welcome back. We missed you." Kofi smiled gently. "Did you miss my work or my wisdom?" Some laughed awkwardly. Others stayed quiet. Quaim took him into the conference room. Charts on the walls, documents on the table. So many numbers, so many deals. But Kofi only opened his small notebook. Inside were drawings of the village well, a list of promises from the children, a sketch of the promise tree. He placed the notebook on the table. "This is the business I care about now," he said. There was silence. One man cleared his throat. "But that doesn't make money." Kofi looked him in the eyes. "Some things make something greater, peace, joy, meaning." Quame leaned forward. "Kofi, what are you saying?" Kofi stood up. "I'm saying we need to stop chasing gold and start planting trees." Some scoffed, some frowned, but a few lined in, curious. By the end of the week, Kofi had done something unexpected. He gave up half of his shares in the company to start a village trust fund, money set aside to build schools, farms, and clean water systems in small communities. He spoke on radio and in halls, not about profits but about promises. And every speech ended with the same line: "Riches fade, but the seeds we plant in others, those grow forever." People listened, and some began to understand. After 2 weeks, Kofi returned home. No cars, no suitcases, just him. His notebook and a tiny new seedling in his hands. Amma ran to meet him at the edge of the village. He held up the seedling. "Are you ready?" he asked. Amma laughed and nodded. "Let's plant it." That evening, with the sunset painting the sky, Kofi and Amma knelt beside the promised tree. They dug a small hole, planted the seedling, watered it gently, and as the villagers gathered, watching quietly, Kofi said, "This tree is for the city, for every heart that's still learning to slow down and listen." The village clapped, and that night, under a sky full of stars, the wind whispered through the leaves of both trees. It sounded like hope. One morning the village was quiet except for the soft chirping of birds and the gentle rustle of leaves. Kofi and Amma were sitting beneath the promised tree, watching the new seedling grow stronger each day. Suddenly, a figure appeared at the edge of the village road. He wore a wide hat and a long coat, and carried a small leather bag. He walked slowly, looking at the village with curious eyes. The villagers noticed him and gathered nearby, whispering, "Who is he? Where does he come from? Why is he here?" Kofi stood and greeted the stranger with a warm smile. "Welcome to our village. What brings you here?" The stranger smiled back, his eyes twinkling. "I've traveled far and wide," he said, "searching for answers to a question." Kofi nodded. "What question is that?" The stranger looked around, then fixed his gaze on Kofi. "What is the true measure of wealth?" Kofi thought for a moment. Many had asked this question before. Some said it was gold. Others said it was land or power. But Kofi looked at Amma and the promised tree, and his answer came from the heart. "Wealth," he said, "is the love and kindness we give to others, not what we hold in our hands." Amma smiled. "It's the promises we keep and the lives we touch." The stranger nodded slowly. "Interesting." He said, "And how do you live by this belief?" Kofi gestured to the village. "By living simply, giving generously, and planting seeds of hope." The stranger sat down beneath the tree. He pulled out a small notebook and began to write. "Tell me about your journey," he said. Kofi shared the story of leaving the city to find true happiness in the village. Amma spoke of the promised tree and the changes it brought. The villagers joined in, sharing their own stories of hope and healing. The stranger listened carefully, then said, "Your story is a powerful answer to my question." He closed his notebook. "I will carry this wisdom with me and share it wherever I go." Before leaving, the stranger looked at Kofi and Amma. "May I ask one more thing?" They nodded. "What is the greatest promise you have made to each other?" Kofi smiled and took Amma's hand. "To stay true through wealth and hardship, and to always choose love." Amma squeezed his hand. "To walk together no matter where life takes us." The stranger smiled warmly. "Thank you, you have given me more than I sought." As the stranger walked away, the village felt lighter. The promised tree seemed to stand taller. its leaves shimmering in the sun. Kofi and Amma looked at each other and knew their journey was not just their own. It was a story that would grow and spread, like the tree reaching hearts far beyond their village. The Festival of Lights, the village was alive with excitement. It was time for the Festival of Lights, a special celebration that came once every year. The festival was not just about bright lanterns or colorful decorations. It was about hope, joy, and coming together as a community. Amma and Kofi were busy preparing. Amma wove small baskets from palm leaves to hold candles. Kofi helped the children gather smooth stones and colorful flowers. The villagers worked together, humming songs that floated on the warm breeze. That evening, as the sun dipped behind the hills, the whole village gathered near the promised tree. Everyone held a candle. The children's eyes sparkled with excitement. The elders smiled quietly. Amma spoke softly. Tonight we light these candles for the promises we make to ourselves, to each other, and to the future. Kofi added, let the light remind us that even the smallest flame can brighten the darkest night. One by one, the candles were lit. The glow spread like a gentle wave, warming faces and hearts. The promised tree stood in the center, its leaves shimmering under the candlelight. Then a surprise came. The stranger from the city returned. He carried a lantern unlike any the village had seen, bright, shining, and made of many colors. He smiled and said, I have traveled far, but this light is the brightest I have ever seen. Together they placed the lantern at the base of the promised tree. The light mixed with the candles, creating a glow that seemed to reach the stars. The festival went on with singing, dancing, and stories. Everyone felt the magic of the night, not from the lights alone, but from the love that filled the air. As the festival ended, Kofi and Amma stood hand in hand. They looked at the tree, the lanterns, and the joyful faces around them. Amma whispered, this is what true wealth feels like. Kofi nodded, riches that can't be counted but can be felt. The Festival of Lights became a new tradition. Every year, people from near and far came to the village to celebrate hope, promises, and love. And the promised tree grew taller, stronger, a symbol of a simple truth. The greatest treasure is the light we share with others. One quiet morning, just after the Festival of Lights, a new visitor arrived in the village. She was a young woman carrying a small bundle wrapped in bright cloth. Her eyes were kind but tired. The villagers gathered around, curious. Amma stepped forward to greet her. Welcome to our village. What brings you here? The woman smiled softly. I have heard stories of the promised tree and the kindness here. I have traveled far to find a place where I can start again. Kofi nodded thoughtfully. You are welcome here. This village is a home for those who seek hope. The woman introduced herself as Nia. She told them she had lost much in the city, her job, her home, and her family's trust. But she carried a dream in her heart, a dream to grow something new. Amma offered her a place to stay. You can help us with the garden and learn our ways. Nia's eyes brightened. Thank you. I want to learn how to plant seeds that grow not just in the soil, but in the heart. Days passed and Nia worked hard. She learned to till the earth, to care for the plants, and to listen to the stories of the village elders. Kofi and Amma watched as she slowly healed. One afternoon, Nia sat under the promised tree and spoke quietly. I want to give something back. Something to help the village grow. Kofi smiled. We all have gifts to share. What is yours? Nia reached into her bundle and pulled out a small, worn book. It was filled with drawings and notes about plants, how to grow food, heal sickness, and care for the earth. With Nia's knowledge, the village garden blossomed. New vegetables grew, flowers brightened the paths, and the villagers felt stronger and healthier. The promised tree seemed to shine even brighter. One evening, Nia thanked Kofi and Amma. One early morning, the village woke to a soft murmur. The river nearby, which had been quiet for months, was flowing again, clear and full. Amma ran to the riverbank, her heart light with joy. The river is giving us water once more, she called to the villagers. Kofi joined her, smiling. This is a blessing, water means life. The village gathered to celebrate. They filled pots and buckets, their faces shining with gratitude. Nia showed them how to build small canals to bring water to the fields and gardens. The children laughed as they splashed in the cool water. But the river's gift came with a question. The elders gathered under the baobab tree. How can we care for this water so it will not leave us again? Asked Nana Essie. Kofi spoke. We must protect the land, plant more trees, and use the water wisely. Amma added, we must teach our children to respect the river as part of our family. The village decided to hold a river day, a day to clean the river. Plant trees along its banks and promise to protect it. Nia helped the children make colorful signs with messages like, keep the river clean. Water is life, promise to protect our river. On River Day, the whole village worked together. They picked up trash, planted seedlings, and sang songs of thanks. Even the stranger from the city came to help. This is the true wealth of your village, he said. As the sun set, the river sparkled under the golden light. Kofi and Amma stood hand in hand. The river has given us a gift, Amma said softly. And we have made a promise to keep it. Kofi nodded. Together we will guard this treasure. For today and for all tomorrows. One cool evening as the sun set behind the hills, the village gathered around a large fire near the promised tree. It was time for a special celebration, a night of stories and songs. Amma smiled as she saw children sitting close to their parents, eyes wide with excitement. Kofi sat beside her, humming softly. Suddenly a soft voice began to sing. It was Nia. Her song was like a gentle breeze, telling stories of the river, the trees and the dreams that grow in the heart. Everyone listened, quiet and still. When Nia finished, the village erupted in applause. Then the elders joined in, sharing songs passed down through many years. The children sang too, their voices clear and bright like birds in the morning. Kofi stood and spoke. Songs are a gift, he said. They carry our history, our hopes, and our promises. When words are forgotten, songs remember. Amma nodded. Through song, we keep our stories alive and our hearts connected. Inspired, the villagers began to teach each other their favorite songs. Nia showed the children a song from her hometown. Kofi shared a tune he remembered from the city. Amma taught a lullaby her mother had sung. The night grew deep, but the music never stopped. Even the stars seemed to twinkle in time with the melodies. The promise tree stood tall, its leaves shimmering in the firelight. As the fire burned low, Kofi and Amma held hands. This night will live in our hearts forever, Amma whispered. Because the gift of song is a gift that lasts. Kofi smiled. And it will carry us through every season. The village's promise, the sun rose bright over the village, lighting up the fields and the promised tree. That morning, the villagers gathered in the open square. Today was a special day, a day to make a new promise together. Kofi stepped forward and spoke. We have learned many things since the promised tree was planted, he said. About love, hope, and care for each other and our land. Amma nodded and added. Now it is time to make a promise as one village, a promise to protect, to share, and to grow. The villagers listened quietly, feeling the weight and warmth of the moment. One by one, they came forward to speak their promises. An old man promised to teach the children the stories of their ancestors. After many days of traveling and sharing their promise, Kofi, Amma, and their friends returned to their village. The sun was shining warmly, and the promised tree welcomed them with its strong branches and green leaves. The villagers gathered to greet them. There were smiles, hugs, and stories to tell. Kofi looked around and felt a deep happiness. Home is not just a place, he said. It is the love we carry and share. Amma nodded, holding his hand. We have learned so much on our journey, she said. But the greatest lesson is that home is where the heart is. That evening under the stars, the village celebrated. They sang songs, told stories. and lit candles around the promised tree. The light was brighter than Eve. Kofi and Amma stood together, knowing their journey had come full circle. They had found what they were searching for, not just wealth or a wife, but a life filled with love, promise, and hope. The promised tree continued to grow, a symbol of the village's heart. And the story of the rich stranger who wanted a village wife became a story of all who seek kindness and belonging. Subscribe now for more captivating African love stories, drama series, and inspiring tales.